Ah, okay.
Molly Friedland, alternate as well here.
I'm impressed. Look at all of us here. Okay. Next item is the adoption of the minutes from April 7th. Is there a motion regarding the minutes, please?
So moved to accept.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate. Thank you. Minutes are adopted. The next item, I am recusing myself as I did the last time. And John, would you take over for this, please?
Okay, this will be the final plan review for a subdivision of an existing structure entitled Caraglia LLC for Dr. Penelope Houghton. The proposal is to subdivide the existing building located on a 16,117 square foot lot located at 71 Oak Street, tax map 136, lot 124, into 4 professional offices in the downtown zone. Before I open it up to questions, I have a, what's that? I guess I was hearing some feedback. I guess a question for staff. I think at one point this was considered major or minor, and I guess there was some discussion in between the 2 meetings whether this is a major or minor. Can somebody explain whether this is a major or minor?
So it's not a major. There was some discussion about that, and probably a little bit of miscommunication as well. I think it's minor, but really that's in the hands of the code enforcement office, whether it's a minor use, or the other option would be limited scope, which is basically just a building permit project. But aside from just approving the subdivision of the structure, everything else is handled by the code enforcement office.
Basically, the reason I'm asking is, I mean, a couple months ago, we had a similar subdivision on Union Street that was considered a major subdivision.
Yes.
So just a little confused.
Yeah, it's confusing. And it is, there are some things that we could address in the ordinance itself to improve upon that. One difference with Union Street was that there's some residential, or at least a rental type unit there. There's also, the code enforcement office always has the discretion to elevate a project to a major use site plan review. You'll see that later in the agenda with the storage units.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board members? If not, I'll ask Carla. Are you answering the questions on behalf of the owner?
Yeah. Oh, let me see. Am I on? Yes.
Okay. I noticed in the initial application, initial review, that in the letter dated March 11th, it says there are currently 4 parking spaces. Based on the gross square footage of the building, a total of 7 spaces are required. A total of 8 spaces will be provided. However, in the new site plan, it shows a total of 6 parking places. So I wonder what has changed.
Yeah, we're actually providing 6 spaces plus an ADA space. So it's 7. And it was the calculations of the interior gross area we adjusted because we got it wrong in the first letter. I thought we had revised all of those references so that they would all say the same thing.
In the how the parking spaces are arrayed, didn't that change a little bit too from before till now?
They haven't really changed very much. What we're doing and I don't know if should I share the site plan or I'm referring to the site plan that we updated, and it has the date of April 15th.
That would probably help if you shared that.
Sure, let me do that. And I'll try and make that bigger. And I went out to the site with Dwight as well last week, just to make sure that we were all on the same page. Let me make this a little bit clearer. So the site plan always had these parking spaces, these 7 parking spaces on the side. We were also considering utilizing the area of what's really a storage shed for parking. And it turned out that this really is not a good place for ADA. There's an incline that would make it inconvenient for ADA use. So in fact, we ended up placing all of the parking along the side. And I think it was through the TRT meetings that it was discussed that really the way this is characterized is the 6 spaces plus an ADA space is in essence what we're doing, which meets the requirements for the gross area of the interior of the building, and provides that one space that could be dedicated towards ADA.
Carla, I mean, it says proposed gravel parking. So will that parking area still be gravel?
Yes, it will.
It's
a hard pack gravel.
Right, but do you plan on doing anything to kind of outline the parking places? I mean, just a wide open gravel area. You'd be hard pressed for people, if you had 7 people there, to have 7 people parked in unlined parking places.
True. In the spirit of what we're trying to do is, and I think Dwight, in discussions with Dwight, we felt that was an okay approach. We do have a sign that's going to now be at the head of this ADA spot to make sure that is always reserved for those purposes. But Dwight, if I'm understanding, you felt pretty comfortable having it be a gravel space. And I guess as I understand it, Dwight is sort of our person to check in with regard to appropriateness.
I think it's something that will have to be monitored. My recommendation that the first 4 employees that come in, they alternate a space, leave a space between each car. So the first 4 would come up, and that would leave 3 parking spaces that there's no way you couldn't get it right. And the ADA one could only be utilized by someone that has an ADA plate. So I know that's kind of confusing, but if you go from left to right, if you the first provider picks the left spot, and then you skip one for the next provider, it will set itself up that you'll have a space between cars that will be there all day. So as people come in, they're going to pull into those vacant spots between 2 cars.
Would it be helpful if it may interfere with snow removal, but if they put like posts kind of marking each boundary line for each parking place, just to kind of direct people so you know this is a parking place?
Yeah, that would be fine, John, because they're going to be pushing snow across the parking lot to the left.
Yeah.
You see this
Right,
snow
this is
storage area there.
Right. Okay. I mean, that was pretty much my only concern.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, sometimes even a stone curb, sort of a curb stop, but some kind of a signal.
Right.
Right. It's your point that here are the spots, and it's a signal. So a post or a curb stop, that does make sense.
And do you feel that the parking is sufficient? I mean, if there's 4 offices, presumably you have 4 employees, so that would leave 3 parking places left for clients or customers.
Well, originally I wanted 8 spaces, but it goes against the ordinance, and the way the ordinance is written is based on 1.5 spaces per client. So I kind of got shot down because of the ordinance, but I think that's something staff will look at, because being a common sense country boy, to me, if you've got 4 providers, you have to make the assumption you're going to have 4 patients. You also have to make the assumption that some people will get there early waiting to get into their appointment, and there won't be a space. But this is something that could be changed and modified, because they could go on the other side and put 2 spaces in on the other side, or they could level off where the garage is and have another couple spaces there. I think it's something that a plan that can grow with as it develops, and if they require to get more parking, they could do that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from other members?
I'm good.
That was just to reinforce that point. That was going to be my question too, John, about the amount of parking. And it seems, while it may meet the ordinance, I think the likelihood of contention for parking there is pretty high. And overflow off of this property, we wouldn't want to see people trying to parallel park on the side of 1A. It's just something for the operators of those businesses to keep in mind. If they've got customers coming in and that parking lot is full, just make sure nobody does anything unintelligent out on Oak Street. Or, yeah.
Dwight, if you get a chance, maybe tomorrow, because when I looked up the parking standards, what I found was for office building was 3 parking places per 1,000 square feet, but you talked about so many parking places per client. So, I mean, could you just email me that section number?
Yeah, I'll have to verify that on where I got that, but yeah, I will.
Yeah, because we did go with what the ordinance says per 3 per 1,000 square feet of gross area. So.
Yeah, I just wondered, Dwight, going forward, I mean, that's one bad thing about the way it was written is I would consider that probably a good number for, if it was just one office, but where you have 4 offices and you have 4 employees, just, I think, a shortcoming of our ordinance.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
And staff has talked about that too, John.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I will open it up to a public hearing. Nate, do you have anything? Carla, could you take the plan off the screen, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Nothing on the Zoom side.
Carrie, how about you?
No emails.
Okay. Can I have a motion from somebody then?
Move that we approve the final plan review for subdivision of an existing structure entitled Cariglia LLC for Dr. Dalby Houghton, the proposal to subdivide an existing building located on a 16,117 square foot lot located at 71 Oak Street, tax map 136, lot 124, into 4 professional office spaces in the downtown zone.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Just a reminder, Molly, with John not voting, you'll be voting on this. Okay. All in favor?
Voting as well.
Yes, Mark. Yes.
Thank you.
All in favor, show of hands. Are you opposed, Mark?
No.
Oh, you're not voting. Okay, then, Patrick, you're voting also.
All right.
Okay, so it's unanimous. Thank you.
It's my first vote.
There you go. Okay,
would you like a certificate signed by the board to
I expect
commemorate
one
this?
promptly. Thank you, John.
You're welcome. Prepare it, we'll sign it. Okay,
Just as long as
thank
it's
you
not a
all.
letter.
Excuse me?
Nothing.
The next item is a final plan review for a major use site development entitled Grindle Pit for East Skip Grindle and Sons Incorporated. The proposal is to create a 10-acre gravel pit and access road on a 45-acre parcel, tax map 60, lot 8, located on North Street. All of the subject property is located in the rural and limited residential zones. Is someone representing the applicant, please?
Steve Salisbury.
Okay, why don't you just for the public's benefit go over a very brief summary.
Our proposal is to develop a 10-acre gravel pit split into two different sections, pit number 1 and pit number 2, shown in blue, accessed off the Waltham Road, which is down here. We'll come in with a new road and service these two pit areas and retain an emergency, kind of a back entrance towards Kids Peace Way. But the primary access will be off the Waltham Road, North Street, At your request last month, you asked me to note the vernal pool locations we identified in our natural resource report. And those are shown in the blue dots on the plans scattered over the site. And we had our geologist address the water quality issues you asked about under drought conditions and water quality in general because of the pit activities. And those have been addressed in the revised report.
Questions from the board for the applicant?
Yeah, at the last meeting, there was some discussion about who was giving approvals from MDOT and so forth and all that stuff. And I saw someplace in the documentation that, that had been double checked. My question really is that, the letter from MDOT or whatever, is that officially in the file someplace? I did not see it. I mean, I'm not believing you. I just wanted to make sure that was in the permanent file because it had been a bone of contention.
So I can speak to that.
Go ahead.
So their permit application for the entrance from DOT has been in the packet from the beginning. What I did was call the person who issued that, and I had a phone conversation with him. Same person that the abutter had spoken with. And he basically confirmed that unless there was some major change or major misunderstanding, that it was an appropriate permit as approved and as designed. So he said he would double check, but he didn't anticipate that there would be any change.
Further questions?
I think this was asked previously, but I don't recall the answer if it was. With the excavation at the site, was there planned blasting or either now or in the future, Steve?
The answer is no. There's no blasting anticipated here. There's no substantial size rocks or anything like that where we would need to blast anything.
Thank you.
Steve, on the site plan, there's currently a gate off North Street, but I mean, you're building a new road, you know, on the kind of on the left-hand side of the property line. Is the smaller road, is that going to be discontinued? Is that going to, is somebody still going to be able to come in through that gate?
We're not going to discontinue the road or anything like that. We'll maintain the gate there to restrict access.
But the gravel pit won't be using that smaller road, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with questions or comments? This is a public hearing. Any member of the public may question or make or comment on this matter.
I had a question, actually.
Oh, okay.
I see that there's no landscaping proposed and that the natural buffers and tree lines are going to stay as they currently are. I just wondered if there was any type of plan if in developing this road and the gravel pit that those natural landscapes were to be affected negatively, would you be required to like replant the trees if in the process they were damaged or die several years from now and that buffer zone is no longer effective? Would you be required to replant these trees, or is that out of your jurisdiction?
We had not addressed that in the application.
Is that something that perhaps should be addressed, or is moot point?
Well, it's a fair question, I guess. Don't know. We were required not to excavate within a certain amount of feet of the property line. I don't know of any particular. I don't know of any particular requirement that would expect us to maintain a certain number of trees or the health of the trees for the life of the project.
The ordinance addresses buffers, but it does not mention upkeep with the buffers. It's that you can't do anything within that area. So if your natural buffers remain, they, I assume, remain natural.
Right. So my question is, if in the process of developing, if the trees' roots, which extend way past where you're physically developing, become damaged, and in 3 years all of those trees die, is there a way that we could work that into the plan to sort of just acknowledge and monitor sort of natural damages to that buffer zone, which is, you know, pretty close to the lake? Seems important. That's why it's in here. Just a thought.
An interesting thought, yes.
That is a very good question, Molly. And I think where maintaining natural buffers is a way that you can meet the standards, it's kind of assumed that when the board is finding that the plan meets all of the requirements, those existing or to be maintained tree cover buffers are part of what is meeting that. So in theory, if it all died or all got clear cut, it wouldn't be compliant anymore. The challenge is that can be a challenging thing to enforce, especially if it's not, here's so many trees every so many feet, but generally that's the idea, I'd say.
Well, why I certainly wouldn't want the place to become denuded. The problem seems to me to go back to the ordinance, because if we would be looking at this sort of thing in general, I mean, we'd have to look at it for virtually everything that has a buffer, which would be lots and lots of stuff. So it seems to me that the resolution or the fix or something like that is somewhere embedded in an ordinance rewrite or revision, as opposed to something we could do today. I mean, that's just my take.
No, that sounds logical, and I appreciate the conversation.
I think the ordinance covers it in some part. Section 801.5 buffers and screenings. Sub F, natural features shall be maintained wherever possible, to provide a buffer between and so on. So there's a requirement that this shall be maintained. And then at the end of it, in essence, if these types of buffers do not exist or insufficient to provide a buffer, other kinds of buffers shall be considered. I think if we determine what's there now satisfies those requirements, if they were ever to be, I think I would interpret this language to require the applicant, the user, to maintain those buffers at least at the level that they exist as today.
We better be prepared to interpret the ordinance that way for all the proposals that come down the line then. So for example, when we were talking about the solar power thing or whatever, we were talking about buffers there, and it never came up. Now maybe that's the error, but if you're going to impose it on one use like this, then I think you have to be prepared to do that for, again, anybody that has a buffer.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting we apply any conditions to the application regarding buffers. More so that I think the language in the ordinance as of now lays out the requirement and then the maintain it. So if, down the road, I mean, it's not a condition, it's just a requirement of the land use ordinance. Someone might disagree with the interpretation, and I think what I'm hearing is maybe, an amendment to make this more clear would potentially be preferable, but I'm not proposing as a condition, more just that's a way you can interpret the ordinance to require maintenance of the buffers as is moving forward.
Anyone else? Okay, let me open the public hearing then. And is there anyone out there?
Actually, yes, there is. On Zoom, we have a comment from a Dale Cook. His comment reads, "Hi, this is Dale Cook, Operations Manager from Kids Piece. We have 0 reservations with Grindle moving forward with their pit." End comment.
Okay. Any others come in?
Well, kind of going along that same line, the next door neighbor had mentioned contacting the national Kids Piece, who apparently was not aware of the development, but Dale Cook is the manager at Kids Piece in Ellsworth. Is that correct?
That's what he said. He said he's operations manager.
Okay, so he doesn't have any. Just that the neighbor brought that point up.
So I had checked on the where the abutters notices were sent, and the owner was a local address. So the owner was not the national headquarters.
Oh, and excuse me, but Dale Cook actually added one more thing. He does note that our corporate office was notified.
Carrie, do you have anyone?
I have no comments, John.
Okay, thank you. In that case, I shall close the public hearing. And what would the board like to do on this matter?
I'll make a motion that we approve the final plan review for major use site development entitled Grindle Pit for E-Skip Grindle and Sons Incorporated. The proposal is to create a 10-acre gravel pit and access road on a 45-acre parcel tax map 60 lot 8 located on North Street. All the subject property is located in rural and limited residential zones.
Is there a second?
Second.
Excuse me?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Just one comment, suggest a friendly amendment that the motion be pursuant to the submission and receipt of state permits per staff's comments on the TRT review.
Any objection to that?
No.
In that case, all those in favor, please indicate. All right. In that case, the next item is preliminary plan review for a major use site development and subdivision of new and existing structures entitled Maine SSI LLC DBA, doing business as one-stop self-storage. And this is for Maine SS, it's SS1 LLC. The proposal is to renovate and expand an existing self-storage facility on a 3.5 acre parcel, tax map 31, lot 10-1, located at 36 Hagen's Elbow. All of the subject property is located in the rural zone. Someone representing the applicant, please.
Stephen Salisbury.
Go ahead and tell us about this.
Sure. Let me pop up a map for you. Okay, this little section of town road is known as Hagen's Elbow off the Bucksport Road. Wallace maintained a storage business here for many years, and he recently sold it to my client. So as you drive in, there's an existing driveway here where my hand is moving. To the left is a old, I believe it used to be a chicken barn, but it's an old wooden barn. That's going to be demolished under this proposal, and the slab will be reutilized. And these in the red will be 2 rows of self-storage modular units. There'll be another little pod here. There will be a strip of modular buildings here for self-storage and 2 more rows of buildings in this location. The blue rectangles represent Ellsworth's ladder truck, which is their biggest apparatus. And we're trying to demonstrate in this illustration that the trucks can drive in, turn around, and get back out of the site at these 2 locations. And I've had several discussions with Tom about this, and we agreed to this plan. There may or may not be a gate. I don't believe my client's committed one way or the other, but we proposed a gate if we're going to have one here, an electric gate to safeguard the facility. Now there is no gate. There are no lights. In part of the application, there's going to be a request for a waiver to meet full compliance of the lighting standards. I can explain that a little bit more, but on the new buildings, I do propose a single light on each building to give some illumination as a compromise to the city rather than no lights at all. And lastly, we've reached agreement with the fire department to install an underground water supply tank at the entrance right here by the gate. There will be a concrete vault in the ground and a typical dry hydrant attachment point for water supply in the event of a fire. And that's all I have at this moment. Thank you.
Questions from the board?
Do you have a sense for what percentage, how much of a percentage of increase in the storage space there is from, based on what is there now? I mean, I made it as a relatively small increase. I mean, it wasn't like it doubled in size, for example. Do you have numbers on that or anything?
I'm just guessing probably a third more storage availability. Because we're going from a big empty, a big building without containment, so to speak, to modularized self-storage units. So it's a little bit of a different type model. But if you take the square footage of that warehouse, it may be even a wash. I have not calculated the square footage of the storage presently compared to what we're proposing.
Well, the current storage buildings are larger, right? I'm not. I mean, the low shed type things. I mean, those are actually larger than what's going in there now, right?
Yes. Yes, the units we're putting in now are 8 feet in depth.
Steve, according to your application on page 2, you're going from a 8,960 square foot existing building gross floor area to a 8,058 square feet proposed building gross floor area.
There we go.
So you're actually decreasing it by almost, 900 square feet.
That barn is large.
Yeah.
Barn. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Steve, it looks like you're utilizing existing impervious surface. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Did the original development, are you aware, did it have to go through stormwater or anything like that with DEP?
No, I'm not aware. It's been there as long as I can remember. I could not date the exact sequence of construction out there from the tax cards.
Yeah. So the proposal's not to increase impervious surface.
Yeah.
Only ever so slightly. Again, on page 2, that about 5,000 square feet more impervious surface.
I'd like to inquire of the staff, considering the applicant is going to be asking for a waiver on the lighting requirements, what the staff feels about that. Although, Steve, you did say you were going to add a couple of lights. Did I get that right?
Yes, on the plan, you'll see one light on every building to give some illumination. Because I don't feel it's an appropriate setting to add light to bring the illumination level even up to the rule standard, just because there are none. I'm pretty sure the neighbors wouldn't be too happy with that. So I'm trying to keep the light at a reasonable compromise with the city.
How does staff feel about that?
So I generally support it. There's a couple things. I mean, yes, it's a kind of a balance. They're providing something new. If I heard correctly, the gate is definitely going in, so access will be limited to those who should have access. Less of a security concern in that sense, I think. And, it's just kind of a tricky site in general. I think if this weren't here since, maybe early 90s is kind of what I gathered from the tax cards. I don't think this is a place that we would have necessarily zoned to allow that, or that an investor would seek out, but where it does exist, to make that balance between the rural residential nature and improving the safety of it, I think is reasonable.
Is self-storage a permitted use in the rural zoning district?
So there's not a specific self-storage category. There is a warehousing category that's permitted, and there is the commercial use category that's permitted in the rural zone, which I'm sure you guys have or you all have discussed that before, but it's a pretty broadly defined category. So I think between the two of those things, yes, is permitted.
So you're not seeing this as a non-conforming use?
No.
Yeah, okay.
Just a comment on page 15, you talk about traffic. And while I basically agree that the traffic increase is really minimal, if at all, I would just make the note that I would like to see, all developers start to incorporate actual estimates of traffic that can be based on the ITE chip generation manual and software. I mean, there is in fact a land use that is covered in that manual specifically for mini warehouses, which is what this is. So again, I'm not saying that to go forward, you need to do that this time, because I generally agree with your assertion that there's not much traffic, but I would not like the precedent to be that we can just qualitatively say that when in fact we can quantitatively actually say that, if that was clear. Was that clear? I see at least Elena nodding her head, so that
Yes.
okay, right?
I think, and maybe this is a conversation to be had offline, but Rick, where I know you have some expertise in this area, I had looked up that IT category and I was curious about how an applicant handles it. The way I read it, it looked like there were no studies provided for anything, or even a projection provided for anything smaller than 10,000 square feet. And I wasn't sure how you would extrapolate that for something even smaller.
Well, yeah, I think we can have that discussion offline, and be glad to actually. But again, I'd like to see something in the ordinance, and this is kind of note to file, right? That part of the ordinance should address those kinds of things, and the ability to use software and so forth to make projections, whether that be drainage or traffic or whatever. When those things exist, they should be used.
I think it's a valid point, Rick, too, also considering the applicant in reducing the lighting requirements to be good neighbors to the neighbors. If there's a big increase in traffic, then the neighbors will be upset. So, I think you have to balance both the traffic and the light at the same time.
Oh, it's a system, to be sure.
Anyone else?
I assume that there's no need to actually talk to Maine DOT about the entrance onto Route 1, because the entrance to this facility is actually on Hagen's Elbow and not Route 1. So am I correct?
I think so.
That there is no need to talk to the state in this particular situation?
No, because the property is on Hagen's Elbow, which is not a state road. So the fact that roads connect with major arteries is, in this case, neither here nor there.
Okay.
If I can chime in to answer Rick's question, the only circumstance where an applicant would have to address an issue with the DOT at a off-site intersection would be if you're generating more than 100 trips per hour of traffic, which is quite a bit of traffic.
Yeah, and this certainly doesn't generate that much.
Yes, but there are some cases where you may have to get a Maine Department of Transportation permit, but this is not one of them.
And I would just point out that, what really triggers my thought was the fact that the one intersection of Hagen's Elbow with Route 1 is a nice right angle sort of intersection, whereas the other one is really kind of an angle, and which is not necessarily a good thing ever. So, but again, I don't think that in this particular instance, it's enough to warrant going to the mat over it, as they say.
Any other board members have questions or comments?
a clarifying question for Steve. Under signage, the 4x8 sign placed at the and maintained at the entrance, I presume that to be the entrance on Hagen's Elbow, not on Route 1.
Yes, and that's shown, the location is shown on our site plan.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments from the board, I'd like to open the public hearing. And are there any members of the public commenting?
Yes, Mr. Fink. Actually, myself would like to comment.
Okay.
My name is Nate Burkett. I'm actually doing the broadcast for the meeting, but I actually live across the street from the unit as well. I live in 33 Hagen's Elbow, right at the opening of it. Looking forward to the project, all honestly. I just had a quick question in regards to the lighting part of it. I'm assuming all the lighting that is going to be done is pretty much on the inward facing side where all the doors are of the storage units, right? It's not a whole lot's going to bleed out into the road is my assumption, right?
Yeah, that was part of my strategy, was to place them where we have two opposing buildings to kind of contain the light there. And the lights will be mounted 7 or 8 feet off the ground, and they'll be down shining lights. So maybe except in a case where it's foggy or snowing out, you shouldn't see much light radiating out from that site. And they're very low wattage lights. They're like 12 volt LED lights. 12 watt LED lights.
Excellent. And one last question, if I may. Is the sign illuminated?
No.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Okay. Kerry, do you have anyone?
I have no comments, John.
Okay, thank you. So this is a preliminary application. Our role is to make a determination of completeness or not. Has anyone found any issues with completeness? In that case, is there a motion regarding this application?
I'll make a motion that we find the preliminary plan review complete for a major use site development and subdivision of new and existing structures entitled Maine SS1 LLC, doing business as One Stop Self-Storage for Maine SS1 LLC. The proposal is to renovate and expand an existing self-storage facility on a 3.5 acre parcel, tax map 31, lot 10-1, located at 36 Hagen's Elbow. All the subject property is located in the rural zone.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate. Thank you. The next item, staff comments. Are there staff comments?
Yes, I have a couple. One, some updates, and one, a little bit of discussion. Just updates to let you know where a few things stand. You may have heard that the council had an agenda item recently to consider the different adult use marijuana types of uses that could be permitted in the city and licensed in the city. So basically at this point, they've directed staff to schedule a workshop. We will have some assistance from the State Office of Marijuana Policy for that workshop. I think what we would like to do is hold a joint workshop between both the council and the planning board. So at this time, the manager is working with the council on dates. And once that's a little bit clearer, I can reach out to the planning board as well. Just be able to educate both bodies at the same time about the relevant law, and but the planning board and staff wouldn't really take up the task of developing regulations until there is some direction from the council. There's, I think, 5 different types of land uses related to adult use marijuana that could be permitted. It's not necessarily all 5. It could be 1, it could be 4. And they vary enough that they would probably require a different look at each one. So that's coming up. Just so you know, we're also working on shoreland zoning updates sometime in the near future. So we'll share more about that as it becomes prepared. And since I heard mention of the comp plan earlier, last week, the previous Monday, there was a budget workshop where the planning department's budget was presented. That includes reserve funds. That would be a portion of the funding for a comp plan, and didn't raise any discussion or opposition at this stage. So far, so good. And then for a little bit of discussion, we've kind of been asked to consider going back to in-person meetings. The council has gone back to in-person and the school board as well. I think for, as of this meeting, it's open to your discussion, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the next month or so, we actually get direction to go back. So not having any direction from above at this point, I figured it was worth discussing whether you're comfortable with planning on that for June or not, so that we can plan accordingly.
I'm comfortable.
As long as people are vaxxed up and you maintain distancing and so forth, like council does, I'm good.
Same here. Anyone else?
Same.
Same for me as well.
I mean, I don't know that we can guarantee anybody's vaccination status, but we can certainly take every other measure. But
We
thank
could,
you.
we can do what wildlife people do and just have a hypodermic gun, and as members are walking around, suddenly they're immunized.
I like that concept.
Yeah.
Just to add a little bit to Lena's first comments on the recreational marijuana, just to inform the rest of the board that myself and Chairman Fink also received an email from the gentleman who was inquiring.
Yes.
Rick did too, and maybe he sent email. Did you send emails to everybody? But basically, we referred him to the city manager, city staff, Elena, and also highly suggested to him, I did, that he not contact any planning board member in the future on this.
Yeah, I that's exactly what I did. I kind of encouraged him to talk to Janet. Now, is that okay, or should it be Janet and Elena, or what?
Probably me for you to, as support for you at this point.
Okay.
So yes, I did. Both Johns forwarded that to me, and I did respond to let him know where things stand. And just so you all know too, part of the council, I think, was ready to address the topic on their own, but staff has also kind of been asking for that as well, because we are getting approached fairly frequently by people who want to locate uses in Ellsworth and want to know what's the deal and when, if ever, is it changing. So he's not the first.
Okay, anyone else? Is that the end of staff comments then?
That is the end. Yeah.
Okay, in
I'll
that
just
case,
I'll just note, I work with a number of marijuana businesses and municipalities that are going through the process of bringing these businesses, voting to opt in. So I'll still defer to Elena and everything, but I'm happy to provide my perspective from my experiences through that process.
okay, we'll keep that in mind. Further discussion?
I have one thing before we go to adjournment, Mr. Fink.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not aware, the Ellsworth Fire Department lost a member of their family today. Deputy Chief Bobby Dorr passed away due to cancer. I'd like to express my condolences, and perhaps the board could have a moment of silence for the Ellsworth Fire Department, for the family of Deputy Chief Dorr, express our condolences to the whole City Hall family.
I agreed. I assume everyone else does. So let us hold a minute of silence, please. John, would you take it upon yourself to convey the board's condolences to the family, please?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Next item of business is adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, please. Thank you all. Molly, before we go, I just wish to let you know about the sewing machine motor. It smoked yesterday. A replacement motor will be in next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
to know.
Thanks for the update.
You're welcome. I thought this was the fastest way.
It is indeed. Take care, kids.
Okay.